One thing I believe is food is very important to the living and the dead. And today, brace yourselves for a paranormal roller coaster ride like no other. I'm Tony Sweet, your navigator through the mysteries and the haunted right here on Truth Be Told. Today, we're joined by the incomparable Amy Bruni, a fearless investigator of all things that go bump in the night. Amy's new book is set to drop July 30th, 2024, promising to peel back the veil between our world and the next. From haunted hotels to restless spirits, she captured it all in a chilling, detailed book. In her book, Food to Die For, Amy takes us on a journey through haunted restaurants, eerie inns, and spooky eateries, sharing ghost stories and recipes that will tantalize your taste buds and send shivers down your spine. It's a captivating blend of history, mystery, and gastronomy that you won't want to miss. So without further ado, let's get this started and uncover the delicious haunted world Amy Bruni has cooked up for us. Please welcome to the Truth Be Told studios for the first time, Amy Bruni. Miss Amy Bruni, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm so excited to have you. Like I said, I was telling you before the show, or before we started interviewing, I've been doing this a long time. You've been doing this a long time. How in the heck have you not been on my show before?
I don't know, honestly. I feel like I've done all of them, but I guess I haven't. So,
I guess not.
Save the best for last, as
they say. I got it on tape, everyone. All right, so you're here for a reason. In just a few weeks, you're releasing a book, and it's called Food to Die For. And I am so interested, and I love that you combined paranormal with recipes. And so can you tell us, for the audience, what this book's about and why did you put it together?
Yeah, so Food to Die For is a compilation of recipes from haunted locations all over the United States. And this was just, so to be very candid, I love a few things in life. I love ghosts, and I love food, and I love wine, and I love traveling. And so I was like, how do I do all of these things at once? And that's when the cookbook was born. But truthfully, too, I saw the Fall River Historical Society, where the Lizzie Borden house is. They posted on Facebook one day a picture of a recipe card they had found that featured Lizzie Borden's meatloaf recipe. And I thought to myself, wouldn't that be weird to make Lizzie Borden's meatloaf? Like, suddenly you're like transported, like you're not just walking through her house and like looking at artifacts, you're actually like eating and smelling something that the Bordens experienced for themselves. It's like, it's so, that intrigued me. And that was really kind of the moment where like there's this little light bulb in my head where I was like, there has to be more recipes like this out there.
Well, I have to say, to this day, if I walk and I smell a certain scent of a certain type of food, I think of my grandmother. I think of 100%. My mother. And so smells do get embedded into our mind of a certain time and place. So I find that fascinating to, combine the two paranormal with an actual food and scent. Because, you know, food not only looks good and tastes good, but it smells good.
It does. And it's funny that you say that because there is a recipe in the book. So my mother died in 2018 and
mine too.
2018, losing mothers twice.
Right. Yeah. Apparently we joined that club, which is not one we want to join.
It's not the best club to be in, but my mom did make this this amazing Caesar salad. And it's just one of those things you don't think about. Like, she just made it all the time, but she never wrote it down. And one of the recipes in this book, so when she died, she took the salad with her, basically. And so one of the recipes in this book is a Caesar salad recipe from Sheboygan Asylum, of all places. And when I made it, it was literally my mom's Caesar salad. Like, it tastes exactly like it. And so I had this aha moment where I was like, oh my gosh, like, this is a sign. Like, I found her recipe. Like, this is exactly it. It's delicious. But it also came from an asylum, which we won't.
So how did you? I know you started with Lizzie Borden. Okay, that's one. But you're like, okay, I got this idea. But what was the concept of putting it together? Like, you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to start contacting some of the sites that I've done investigations on to see if they did have like an old Bible or recipe book or something that, they talked about the food. How did that research go?
It was a little complex in the sense that I didn't want to do all like historical recipes because like, frankly, like Lizzie Borden's meatloaf looks pretty atrocious. So.
Was it just the cook or no, I was kidding.
No, it's a very odd recipe. And so what I did is I did a mix of like very historic recipes, like for the sake of being historical and understanding what they ate and experienced, things like Nutriloaf from Eastern State Penitentiary or hardtack from the old county or the old city jail in St. Augustine, things that aren't necessarily the best food ever. But then I mixed in things that are just super delicious. Some of them still historic, which is really good. And others like were more modern, like the Mount Washington Hotel gave me a recipe for like their famous, blueberry sausage they make every breakfast, every morning. And then the Myrtles in Louisiana, they gave me their croissant bread pudding recipe, which is literally to die for. It's so good. So there's a lot of things in there that are just amazing. So it's really fun to kind of go through and like, not only is there the recipe, but there's all this history and there's ghost stories to go with each one. So it's a learning experience for sure. But that was it. It was like, I wanted to make sure that it wasn't all just recipes that people were going to be like, this is interesting, but I don't know that I want to make this. I wanted people to be able to really make these recipes. And there's a lot that are in like heavy rotation in my house now that my family loves. So
now you were almost nearly 60 locations featured in your cookbook. And was there a criteria of choosing these particular 60 locations? Because I find that interesting because there's definitely a lot more than 60.
100%. Like we had, I think, almost 90 to begin with.
Wow.
Which obviously there could be a part two. But what happened was we were trying to figure out how we wanted to lay out the book. And we really just wanted to make sure that regionally in the U.S., everyone was kind of covered, that there was something from every region. Not necessarily from every state, but just kind of every area. And so that was where we had to fill in some holes, and I had to like look up some places I've never even been before and like interview people associated with them and find recipes for them. And so that was kind of the criteria, not the only criteria. It had to also be something that we could make without poisoning people.
Right.
But yeah, so that was the big one towards the end. And we started looking at it all kind of laid out on a map. There were definitely some holes we had to fill in. So, but we're already talking about a part two, either more here or international or cocktails or there's so many ways we could go with this.
Well, I know me because I'm a big foodie too, but I'm also very picky. So just getting the recipe in your hand, or somebody sending the email from a location, you've had to try these at least up to 60 of these recipes to even want to put it in there, because you don't want to put one in and like somebody said, now this is disgusting.
Well, there might be some that are disgusting, but we tried them all and we were like, yep, that's disgusting. Like, no.
But we're putting it anyway.
But I would say those are few and far between. And it's pretty clear those are like the historically accurate ones. Like I call again on like hardtack, which is literally just basically flour and water, and that's what they fed, prisoners at the St. Augustine jail, or hardtack, which is like a mix of like meal and ketchup, and it's just not. It's not anything. Or sorry, Nutriloaf, I should say. It's just this mix of like. It's not delicious, but for historical purposes, I feel like it's good to know these things, and so. We did test every single recipe, and some of them were so historic that in order to just kind of make sure people could actually cook them in modern kitchens, we did have to make like some alterations here and there. We did try to call back to the original recipe so people know what we did, but there were a few where we were like, if people try to make this in their oven, there is a chance they're going to get salmonella. So we have to like.
So the locations that you chose. So was there any like locations that you did not actually because you said some of them are historicals, like recipes, so you not necessarily has it associated with a person or a location. It's just a historical recipe. But some of the locations, was it always the place that you have investigated? And if not, getting these recipes, did you go into details about the location and about some of the people that was associated with it?
Oh yeah, there were a few that I have not been to.
Oh, really?
And so not many, but there were a few that I've not investigated. I'm like one that I'm thinking of right away is like, it's the Herman, I think it's Grimes house. I could be misspeaking on the name, but it's in New Orleans. And that one I had not been to, but we did a crab soup recipe from there. And that one was more like a regional crab soup as opposed to specifically from that location. But it came from this like 1885 cookbook that we found of Creole cooking. And so that one was one of those ones that we had to kind of like decipher a little bit. But yeah, I hadn't been there. And so there's a few that I'm like, geez, I really want to visit this place.
I was going to ask you if that.
Yeah, but all of them are like the history and the ghost stories are very in depth. And, we reached out to people when necessary for like interviews and things. But yeah, it's quite a deep dive for being a cookbook.
So you mentioned a little bit about recreating some of these, and like you said, some of them would have caused salmonella. But was there any difficulty in recreating some of these recipes that were hundreds of years old, and how did you overcome these challenges? Because, like you said, they didn't have all the resources that we do nowadays.
Honestly, the crab soup is the one that always pops out for me because that one literally was like, catch 24 crabs, boil their innards, That one we turned into actually a quite lovely crab soup recipe. We modernized it a little bit. But then there are some that are just like the Puritan pudding from the Proctor House is exactly like it was made starting in the 1600s, and it's delicious. The peanut soup from the Farnsworth House. Like, if you've been to Gettysburg, everyone's like, you have to have the peanut soup from the Farnsworth House. And that's a place I've investigated many times. And that soup is exactly as written. And it is also, like, that's one that my family makes me cook again and again. So there's a lot that are just like, there's a reason why these recipes have existed for hundreds of years. They're delicious.
Well, one thing that I really noticed, and I'm going to show the book cover again for the people that are watching on YouTube. If you're listening to us on the podcast audio, please go over to YouTube. It's the Club Paranormal, and you can watch. Look what I'm showing right now, the book cover. But the book features full color haunting styles of food photos. And can you discuss the creative behind the food photography? Because it's beautiful.
It is honestly like stunning. And so I basically, when we were putting the book together and we were getting into the design phase, I kind of told them like what I was looking for. I was looking for this kind of like witchy, gothic, colonial, dark, and we made like this mood board and everything. And so then they just completely nailed it. Like, there was a whole design team. They were in Nashville for like 5 days in studio, cooking every recipe, styling every recipe, photographing every recipe. And they look like paintings, a lot of them.
They do.
And so they would send me the dailies every night. And I was like moved to tears at how just beautiful these were. And, the only hand I really had in that is giving them the recipes and, kind of my creative vision. But that whole team deserves a huge amount of credit. I would frame some of these and put them like on my wall.
Oh, for sure. No, it's just the colors and the way they just pop, and the food is highlighted, but yet it's a lot going on, but it's so creative. It just makes it, like you said, like an art piece. So it's beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful. You know what I was thinking, that this could go very well with campfire. Is there any recipes in there that people might be able to do ghost stories by the campfire and cook some of this stuff that?
Oh gosh, there's one. Well, there's campfire casserole, if I remember correctly.
Wouldn't that be good? I think that would be an awesome.
And then I'm trying to think. I have the book here, so that's what I'm peeking at right now because there's so many. I'm like, I know. There's one, I just want to call on it before I actually like say the name, but where is it? Ghoulish Ghost Towns. Mining Camp cornmeal pancakes.
Oh, nice.
Definitely make those. Yeah, those are from Coloma, California, like site of the beginning of the gold rush, which that's an area that I'm from. So yeah, there's definitely a few things. Charlotte, no. Sorry.
That's okay.
It's not an interview. Like I said, if a child, cat, or ghost does not interrupt us, it will be a miracle. I live in a 300-year-old house. You never know what's gonna happen here.
Wow, that's awesome.
But there's one I really wanted to find for you. I'll have to find it, but it's basically called Lumpy Dicks.
That's hilarious.
And
I'm like, hey, don't get personal. I'm just kidding.
But I was like trying to think because that one is, here it is. It's from the Donner Party. It's a recipe from Donner Pass. And so I was looking for that because it's from that area, but it's got such meager ingredients. It's definitely something they probably would have attempted. But yeah, it's literally just milk, flour, sugar, cinnamon, butter, and maple. It's kind of like, honestly, I mean, it's just like cream of wheat, basically. But yeah, that was a big thing that they made back then, too. So between the Lumpy Dicks and the cornmeal pancakes, I've got you covered.
I think so. But it would be good to talk about the Lumpy Dicks with a good ghost story by the campfire.
100%.
Well, you know, the some of these locations and stories and people and just historical events. I'm a big history buff, so there are a lot of great recipes out there, and I think, you know, in fact, my family back in the 80s, my last name is Sweet, and we put together a Sweet Family Cookbook, and it was a lot of recipes from our great-great-grandparents. You know, it's even like how to make lye soap, and so Mike, I'm curious to see, have you had any experiences of bringing these recipes, you know, into your home, creating these recipes, and have you had any visitations from some of these spirits that like, hey, you're making my dish, my famous dish?
Yeah. Not as of yet. I kind of wondered when I was making some of like the Civil War era food and whatnot, because my house was built in 1723. And so I was like, am I going to wake up these spirits with this like colonial food or this like, you know,
that
like,
smells familiar.
But I did not really experience any of that personally, but I would not be surprised. I'm always a fan of figuring out like triggering activities and trigger objects to get spirits to kind of manifest. And I can't see why this wouldn't work. You know, like one of the recipes these cookies that the warden's wife at Alcatraz years ago, she used to make these cookies for the inmates. And so it was from one of their old cookbooks. Right. And I can't imagine, like she must have shown up with these cookies and they must have all known that the cookies were coming. Like, I feel like if you made those cookies and took them to Alcatraz today, like something could happen.
Because they're like, that smells familiar.
They're really good cookies, to be honest. Like, it was probably the highlight of their time.
I'm sure they didn't get much treats back then, especially. Well, putting this together, do you feel the combination of history, paranormal stories, and the recipes enhance your kind of understanding and enjoyment of each element? Has it like helped your, you know, because like you said, keeping the enjoyment of just the paranormal investigation? I mean, you've added a new element to your wheelhouse of, you know, has it kind of really enhanced your enjoyment for what you do again?
Absolutely. So anyone who knows me knows like I'm obsessed with history. And one of my biggest kind of missions as a paranormal investigator is to always get the history straight in locations, because I think sometimes we walk into places and you're kind of playing this game of historical telephone where a story has been passed down from, 30, 40 years before, some psychic came in and said one thing and they've just gone with it ever since.
Right.
And so I always like to get the story straight. And so I already had, so a lot of these locations I've investigated or I've covered on my own podcast or I've written about in the past. And so I had a lot of this like historical information already gathered because I'd already researched these places.
Right.
It was nice to add a new element to that. And I've said this before, but like I'm always trying to think of creative ways where I can continue doing what I love, which is researching and investigating ghosts and the paranormal, and keep making it my living in some way, shape, or form. And so I was like, cookbook, that's a new one, So, but yeah, I love the historical aspect of paranormal investigation. It's one of my favorite parts of it. I feel like they just go hand in hand.
In fact, I live in I'm in California now, but I grew up in a small town in Kansas, Granola, Kansas, very small. But back in the early 1900s, late 1800s, it was kind of a railroad town. So they grew to like 1,500 people. Now it's only like 100. It's small now.
Yeah.
But so my sister lives in this house, and of course, most of the houses there are old. And my niece at the time, was when she was younger, kept breaking things and getting in trouble. And my sister got on to her and said, listen, she goes, Mama, no, it's not me. It's so-and-so, whatever the little girl's name was. And my sister, instead of saying, you're making it up, she said, well, who's this little girl? And she goes, well, she lives right over there in a house. And so my sister said, well, if she can't play nice, she needs to go home and not come back. And she said, well, you made her mad, so she ran home. So what I find fascinating is, some of these locations that, like you said, had homes, had houses, that had families, that had, these big meals and food and stuff. So I find it fascinating that, the things that you're bringing to this book of just the history of who these people were and, their private lives. Because, a lot of these mass killers and everything else, we just know what they did that was horrific, but we didn't really see what happened when they just cooked dinner and sit down with their family, or, and it's, that's what I find fascinating, to knowing who these people were.
That's one. So you say that, and so one of the recipes in the book is Villisca cornbread, which is obviously from the Villisca house. Mm-hmm. And one of my biggest missions when it comes to that family is really pushing people to not define them by their end.
Right.
Really think about like that home. I mean, the reality is the night that they all died, they were having a sleepover. They had kids over.
Oh.
They were known for things like that. They had holidays there and dinners, and it was just like they had a very happy family there for years and years. So when I go into that house, I always think like of that part of the house. Like I think about how that's so much more powerful than the horrible thing that happened there. And so, yeah, you can sit and you can enjoy cornbread from Villisca and maybe think about that family, not how tragic their ending was, but think about how beautiful everything was before that and define them by that instead. So, it's just little things that you can experience through taste and smell and learn history at the same time. And so that is a very important facet, I think, to this.
Well, so we're in July which I can't believe it's already July, but
I know, I can't either.
And your book's coming out very soon. It releases July 31st. Is that right?
July 30th.
30th. So, which is very exciting. It's coming up fast, but in a few months, it's also October, Halloween. And I want to know if you were, and this is kind of a fun question, if you were hosting a spooky themed dinner party, which recipe from the book would you choose to impress your guest?
So that's a very good question. So in the back of the book, there's actually menus we've put together.
Oh,
Based
wow.
on so we have like a Civil War feat, we have colonial New England comestibles, we have ghost town grub, and it's a whole menu based on these like kind of themes. There's a toothsome turn of the century gala or a last meal luncheon. And so like you can use any of those and put on a really creepy dinner party
That
for people.
sounds amazing.
So I thought ahead. I thought of this already.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. So like, I think the Civil War feast is fun. That is like, you start with English rolls from the Jenny Wade house. You have goober pea or the peanut soup, which I talked about earlier. For dinner, you have sea bass from Gadsby's Tavern or stewed beef from Fort Delaware. And then for dessert, you have Mary Todd Lincoln's white almond cake.
Oh, Mary Todd. We definitely need
so good. Her almond cake is like the star of this book.
That sounds
it's
amazing.
Really delicious. Yeah, it's like it's even on the cover. Like it is some good stuff.
Well,
she didn't just do seances in the White House. She cooked too.
Really? Okay. Yeah. She didn't have her staff do it for her.
No.
Well, we talked about the pictures in the book, and is there one in particular that you kind of found particularly like eerie or fascinating, and that just stands out to you that people should be aware of or look out for?
Yeah, I'm going to find it for you. So the Seeley Rose house. So Seeley Rose murdered her family by poisoning them with smear case. Like she poisoned smear case with smear case is basically cottage cheese. Okay. And so it was like, how do we photograph this to make this look good, right? Like it's cottage cheese. And so, oh yeah, you're so good at this. You found it that fast. And so let me see if I can find it here for you. But the horrifying homes, it's definitely in horrifying homes. Yeah. She's definitely in horrifying.
I put her on the spot, everybody. So
no, that's okay. I'm good. I'm good at handling stuff like this, but this is the picture that always stands out to me. There are other photos in this book that are just like absolutely stunning, but this is how they made the smear case interesting.
Let me go to a single shot. So, wow.
Which I thought was just so clever.
That is clever, but wow.
But yeah, but obviously there's other there's other beautiful photos in there. But that one I thought was, when I saw that, I was like, of course that's what he did.
Now, are there any I know you live in a house that's 300 years old. Were you ever because growing up in Kansas, my dad and I and the family, we used to tear down a lot of these old homes, and we would find old newspapers, recipes, all kinds of different things. Did you ever find like a recipe in your home that you tried, or in the wall or in the basement or anything like that?
I wish. That would be dreamy.
Oh, wouldn't it be awesome?
But no, I haven't. Yeah, so this house has been gone through with it used to be a museum back in the 30s and 40s. Yeah, because I can't say what happened here, but there was a very historic event that happened in my home. And so, but if I tell you what happened, then people will know where I live. But,
okay.
So for a time, it was actually a museum. And so they kind of went through it, I feel like, with a fine-tooth comb. So I have not found anything cool here, unfortunately. But I've found things in other houses, but not recipes.
Right. All right. Before we let you get out of here, because I know you have so many other interviews to do and promoting your book, how do you think the experience of cooking a recipe from a haunted location would differ from cooking a regular recipe? Would you do anything special to set the moves? Like one of these... Because, I'm the same way. I remember some of these recipes I cook from our Sweet Family Cookbook. I'm like, I don't necessarily like that, but I added something different. Have you ever like re-added something and changed up the recipe enough to where you're like, now I like it?
Oh yeah, I mean, so a couple things. So I've modified quite a few, not in the book, but like some of these I make, like for the peanut soup, for example, I use veggie stock instead of chicken stock. I think it tastes better. I don't really eat that much meat. I eat fish, and that's pretty much it. But
Yeah.
so like these recipes are very conducive to tweaking here and there. Like obviously, like the way that they ate back in the day, they were not very calorie conscious, and so it's okay to slip in a low-fat version here and there. And but like as people are making these recipes, I think that having the history there and the ghost stories that go with each one, I just think that really sets the mood for your cooking at that point. Like I did an audio version too, if people are interested.
Oh, that's great.
So you could actually listen to me telling you all about the location while you cook if you're, not completely sick of my voice by now. But it's, I feel like I love food. I love the experience of food. I love cooking. And so I feel like, really immersing yourself in the origins of a recipe and the history behind it just puts kind of a new meaning to it. Like, yes, we have our family recipes, which are kind of the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
And so you're carrying on these legacies by cooking these recipes. You're carrying on these stories.
Right.
And so I just think kind of putting it into that perspective is important. And I love that right now the world has taken a big interest in historical cooking. Like, I don't know what happened. I think it's because we all started cooking during COVID or something.
Right.
Suddenly there is this really big interest in recreating historical recipes, and I love that.
Well, I have to say I'm honored to have you on. I would love to have you back so we can talk about your experiences in many of the locations. But definitely, I wanted to. I mean, like I said, I'm a foodie, so talking about food is one of my favorite things to do. But I think because August 2nd, I don't know if you know Patty Negri. She's going to.
Oh yeah, I love Patty. Yeah.
I love Patty. I started a nonprofit organization called Earthly Beings Foundation, and it's all about ancient cultures and bringing them back in their traditions and their food and their style. Nice. So we're having a hot summer seance with Patty here in the area. So I think we should have some type of a paranormal recipe cooking dinner party and have you come and be a part of that, and we can have just a big table of people.
I would love that.
Wouldn't that be fun?
I love to think about things like that. Like I love to think about people actually doing that with this book we've put together. Mm-hmm. Like I just imagine people coming together who love ghosts and history and food and actually preparing and serving these meals and these recipes. Yep. It makes me so happy inside. So I would love that.
I think we should do it. I definitely will be in touch because it popped into my head, and unfortunately when things pop into my head, I just have to make it happen.
That's how we got to where we are.
Yes.
Really, right?
Yes.
Just speak in your mind.
Well, is there I know it's coming out July 31st. Again, the book is Food to Die For. And are you going to be, I'm sure you're going to be traveling around doing some book signings. Are there any locations that people can come and get their book signed and see you?
Yeah, the best thing is to go to my website, amybruni.com, because there's a whole calendar of, I'm doing a whole fall tour and stuff, and we're piggybacking on a lot of local bookstores.
That's
and
great.
I'm doing some virtual events with this too, so people can actually cook with me online. And so we're doing a lot. So it's all there. Just check out amybruni.com or my social media. Everything's at Amy Bruni.
Any time going to be back on TV to show?
Yeah, I just wrapped, actually, I just was shooting for 2 weeks in Northern California for a new documentary series. It'll be out in the fall too, so.
Well, she's everywhere and pretty much in every genre you can think of. She's an author, she's a podcast host, and you can go listen to podcast Haunted Road with Amy on Apple and iHeart and pretty much anywhere you get your podcast. And being somebody that's been in podcasting for many years, podcasting, I think, is a great outlet to share our stories and other people's stories. I can't believe that, you're, like I said, you're in all media outlets, meaning TV, podcasting, and now into bookstores.
Yeah, it's a little. I think it was Marcus Harvey from the Ghost Brothers. He calls me the queen of paranormal media. Like, and I'm not.
You have to be.
It was kind of not on purpose. I like to write. I like to podcast. I love being creative and filming things. And I love to look for ghosts. So it just kind of all happens that way.
Well, when does your podcast drop? At what days?
So I'm actually recording new episodes now. So hopefully it'll be
wonderful.
out again. Season 6 will be out in the next month or two. Yeah.
Season 6. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, Amy, thank you so much for being on Truth Be Told. I can't wait to have you back, and we're gonna set that dinner party up.
Okay, sounds great.
All right, thank you everybody for tuning in for Truth Be Told. Every Friday here at 3 p.m. And we appreciate you for subscribing and leaving comments and sharing this show on the Club Paranormal Network. And we appreciate everybody tuning in for Mondays with Robert Hensley with Minuteman Report, Bonnie Burkert doing the Minute Truth Be Told Transformation, and of course, Truth Be Told, the original, right here. And so until next time, take care of yourself and each other.